All right, well, let's get going. Second edition of our Laravel talk. And if you remember from last lecture, we installed and generated a new Laravel application. So we're going to be able to do that again today. We're going to take what we did last time and take it further. I want to talk about domain objects and services, a tool called Tinker, which allows us to interact with our code more simple, and talk about this idea that Laravel is not your app, and then using objects in your routing layer, blade views, passing data into your views, and then iterating over data in your views. So we have quite a bit to cover, and it's just going to be an incremental step into going where we want to go next, and that's building out a full-fledged application in Laravel. So this is going to build some good fundamental tools that we can use moving forward. So, reviewing, generating a new Laravel app, we're going to do that now. And I'm going to create a new application called Quotes. And that'll generate and install all the tools we'll need to run this app. So this is a review of what we did last time. So once it's all good to go, I'm just going to change into that directory. And then I can start the server with this command artisan serve, PHP artisan serve. And so I can go to my local host and port 8000, and then you'll see just the generic page here. So first things first, though, what I want to do to build this out is, let me open up this code structure. Get that in here. Get it organized, looking good. So if you remember, we have our app, we have our routes, and our web routes are identified in here. And here's the /, which is basically your root level app or route, which displays the welcome view. And so the welcome view is where we can look in our resources, views, and notice there's a welcome.blade.php. And so, and this is where you'll find the HTML file or code, and embedded is some your markup, and then any dynamic sort of display of your data. So what I want to talk about next is, thus far in our lectures, we've been working on, objects. We've been creating car objects, creating a car class, creating car objects, having collections of cars, and iterating through the cars, mapping, filtering cars, just interacting with objects in and of themselves. And so what I want to do is take that concept and see how we apply it inside of a web application, because thus far we've kind of been writing it and then just testing that code out at the command line. But we want to test that type of code out in our web application. So let me show you how you can organize and structure your code in that fashion. So what I typically do is I'll create another folder underneath the app, and you can call it different things, but you might hear like business domain or business logic, domain code, anything that's related specific to either their company or the type of code it's going to be housed in, but whatever it happens to be, this is your custom code that's very specific to the work that you're working on or the app that you're working on. So I'm just going to create a folder here. I'll call it domain, like that. And I'm going to create, the name of this app is called Quote. So you'll see in a minute how we're going to be building this up. But just for now, let me create a new file. I'll call it Quote. And then in here, I can give it a namespace. And so, actually, let me write this out. So I'll have an author and a quote, and then a constructor. And then we'll assign those. And so I mean, notice we're just taking the knowledge that we've used previously. So we'll have an author, and we'll print out the quote along with it. Oops. Let me get this all looking good. Okay, so again, nothing crazy new here. One thing I want to identify, just to reiterate what we've been learning already, is that the way I've organized this code is I've created within the app directory a custom folder called domain, which is basically our custom code. And then I put that into a namespace, app domain. So notice the matching of app, domain, domain. And so that way we can structure our code under our stuff and not get it mixed up with any other libraries that we import, like Illuminate and other things that we may use in the future. So that's important to give this namespace a fairly unique name. And then I can just create a class under that we'll use in a minute. So we'll come back to the code here in a second, but I wanted to show you this tool, this tool called Tinker, that allows you to try out some code before you actually start using it. So the way you execute Tinker is from your application root. It's artisan Tinker, like that. And so from here, I can use app domain quote, just like I would in my code. And then from here, I can create an object. And this is an author, a quote, like that. And notice I have access to that class I just created. So from here, I can, see what I'm interacting with. I can get access to my variables. So that's pretty cool. I think this is a great, it's kind of like a sandbox, a place where you can write any code you want here anyway. I can just like literally the word tinker around. So, um, but what I want to do now, though, is we'll come back to this because we'll be trying some things out. And what I want to talk about next is, this Laravel is not your app. So this is a really important concept as your web apps get larger and your domain code should encompass a lot of the business rules, business logic that is for your app. And that is something defined by your business or company. Okay. So what you'll, and why I say Laravel is not your app. Well, Laravel is just a web tool. So it provides the routing, the database level, the getting requests from the browser and taking data from the browser and doing something with it. Well, that's one thing, but your app, maybe I'll put that in quotes here or in bold, your app, that's the custom domain stuff, okay? And those two should be separate, right? Your app logic should be separate from your web logic. And so that's why I've organized things, and that's why I've created a domain directory to house all the business logic inside of that domain area. So that's just something I really just wanted to point out. I'll probably reference it more as we move forward as well, and as we build up items underneath that domain directory. So just want to point that out. Laravel is not your app, okay? Your app is what's defined underneath that domain directory. The Laravel stuff is just the web interactions, and they are separate. We want to separate that code as much as possible. So with that in mind, let's continue to build out our domain objects and services. So what I want to do is I want to interact with another API, and I had an idea to I found this Breaking Bad quotes API that I thought we would use and have some fun with. So if you take a quick look at this, it's a nice, simple API that we can interact with. And I know you've been interacting with a census API, city statistics, but I thought this would be kind of a fun one for our lecture. And so we can get a random quote. We can get several quotes here. They have the host v1 quote /5, which returns 5. So if I click on that URL, notice this API gives us 5 quotes, and I can update this to like 100. And notice it gives us 100 random quotes. So we got, Hank, Saul, Walter White, Jesse Pinkman. It's pretty funny. So with that in mind, I can just take this URL here and use it in our application, pull quotes down, and interact with it. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's jump back over to here. I'm going to get inside the domain. I'm going to create another subdirectory called API. And then in there, I'm going to create another file called quotes. And this will be the code that interacts with our API. So let's do that. And I'll give this a namespace. So your namespace will be, we'll just follow the same path app domain API. Namespace app domain API. And I'll create a class called quotes. I'll create a public static function called fetch. And so this will be the quote. Now we just need to call the API. And so HTTP get, and let me get, copy this. Let's just see if this works actually before we get any further. Oh, I'm using this HTTP library. So Laravel has a built-in HTTP client that will retrieve the JSON data for us. And what's cool about this is that, remember that guzzle library we're using in our console apps? This basically puts a wrapper around that and makes it a lot easier for us to use. So let me bring in that library. So we're going to use Illuminate support facades HTTP. And that should be enough to get that working. Okay, so again, what's a quick way we can test this out? Well, let's go into Tinker and try it out. So I'm going to use API, domain, app, domain, API, quotes, and then I can do quotes, fetch. No. Let's see. Oh, I wonder if I need to, I might need to convert this to JSON to get that to work. Let me see here. Okay, let's go back here. Let me quit and start this again because maybe it didn't pick up the new file. Quotes fetch. What am I doing wrong? Oh, I need to return the data, so that might help. You guys probably already saw that. Here, let me quit and try again. So bring that in. We'll execute that. Boom, nice. So there's our quotes. And so just like that, in this one line, basically, we're able to call the API using HTTP GET, give it the URL. We've capped it at 100, convert that to JSON, and get it into a or convert from JSON, get it into a usable fashion, which is sweet. All right, now we have something to fiddle with. So what I want to do now is I want to go to the web layer and actually display this on a page. So let's jump back down to our web PHP, and I need to create a route for this. So I'm going to route, call it quotes. And let's see. And then we're just going to do quotes index. So basically what I'm doing is namespacing our templates. So this is different than the route. So the route is what you type in the browser. And the view, or this structure here, is just basically where it's organized in your code. So those, just make sure you understand the difference between those two. So here's the web browser route. Here's where it's structured in your code. So if I go down or go find where we need to find our resources, views. It's within here is where I structure my code. So I'm going to create a folder called quotes and then create a file called index.blade.php. And then let me see, I'm going to just do a quick HTML template in here. Breaking bad quotes. Let me get that looking a little more decent here. Okay. So let's just see if this worked, this new route. So it should be /quotes. Okay, so I forgot. Oh, I have a syntax error. And that happens. So just need to have a semicolon there, refresh. Okay, breaking bad quotes. Awesome. That's what we have so far, which is right here. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is I want to actually get access to my quotes. So what I'm going to do now, and this is where we're at on our outline here, is we want to use objects in our routing layer and get the data passed into our views so we can iterate over it. So the way we do that now is we want to load up our quotes like we did in Tinker. So quotes equals quotes fetch, like that. And then we can pass them in an array or an associative array. Quotes. So this, let's stop and talk about this for a second. So remember, this is the template that we're loading, and we can pass data from here in the routes into the template so that the template can then be in charge of displaying that data. So we have, and I'm going to name that basically that variable gets passed into the template with this name, and then the data is whatever we put here. So that's, remember we loaded up, this does the API call, loads it into here, and then we pass that along. So with that in mind, we can then go over to our template and iterate over these guys. So Blade has a built-in helper called for each, and we can for each through those quotes as quote. So we can go through quotes one at a time. And this will close the loop for us. And then we can print each item out. So we'll just put each one inside a set of p tags, and then we'll just print the one quote at a time. So another thing to notice is this double curly brace or mustache, what's called mustache syntax. That will actually output the content of a particular quote in between those braces. All right, so let's see if that works for us. I'm going to refresh. And, oh, quotes not found. Okay. Hey, this is good stuff. You'll probably see these kind of errors too, so I'm not the only one. So actually we need to bring in and use API quotes. So now, because we were getting an error that, hey, it had no idea what quotes was because it's namespaced under this, so we have to bring it in to actually use it. Okay. So let's try this again. Let's see. Expects parameter 1 to be a string. Let's see what's going on then. Let's see, quotes. It's returning what we need. Quotes. Oh, I see what we need to do. We actually need to access each value because each quote, let's see if I were to go back here, each quote is an array with a key. So we need to let's try this out. So let's see, author. And the quote. So actually, yeah, we had this, I forgot, was an array in and of itself. So I need to access each of those values separately. I think I have too many braces here. Oh, I got really brace happy. Okay, let's try that. And refresh over here. All right, awesome. There we go. So we have the author dash and then the quote. Sweet, we're actually doing something here. So one thing we're not doing yet is we're not using our class, and we're not using our class yet. And then I would love to be able to customize this to do like, count equals whatever we want, 5 or 35. I'd love to be able to customize it to do that. So let's work on getting next couple steps to do that. So what I want to do next is I want to use my quote class instead of just taking the straight JSON. And so I'm going to go back to my quotes over here and take this data. Let's see. And I'm going to return. Remember, I'm going to use that collect, which is going to convert the PHP array to a illuminate collection. So let me collect the quote data, map that. And return a new quote. Quote author. Remember, at this state, it's an associative array, so we need to get access to it and use that to instantiate our own quote object. So quote. So now instead of returning the straight associative array, we're going to return our own array of objects. And so then we also need to pull in, just like we did in our console apps, the collection library. And we also now need to use our quote class, right? We have that defined because we're using that here on line 13. So that should pull that in. So what that's going to do now, since we're interacting with an object, and my object has a toString, which knows how to represent itself, right? I can now go back to my template over here and simplify this quite a bit, because now this quote, heck, why don't we go to Tinker and look at that? Quotes fetch, let's see if it picked up my changes. No, I'm going to quit that, go back. Yeah, so now look, we have an array of quote objects. Perfect. So again, just wanted to identify to you what we did. We took it from an array of arrays to an array of objects. And that's something we've seen before and what we've done before. So now that we know that, and I have a toString for each of my objects, I can now simplify this to just print out the quote, because once I print it out from here, it's just going to grab the toString and print it out here. So it might not look different. Let me refresh. It's not going to look different here, but the structure of our code is a lot more simplified and using our own custom stuff. Cool. So the last thing I want to do is I want to be able to put that count query string on the end of the URL so we can adjust and modify. So where that's going to take place is I want to be able to take in a quote here from this route. And the way you do that is you pull in, use a built-in request function built into Laravel, and you call this query function built off that, and then you just grab whatever name of the query string you want to use. And so that's going to give us the value that's inside of count, but I want that to be a number, so I'm actually going to convert that using int val, which takes like a string representation and puts it into a number representation. And I'm going to assign that to a variable called count. So since we're inside of Tinker, I can show you int val will take like a string 35 and give me back an integer 35. Some other interesting things about it is that I can give it anything I want. So Carmen, you know, if it sees something it doesn't recognize, it just gives you back a 0. Right, so it's just a kind of a cool way to take a string parameter and convert it to an integer so we can actually interact with it. So that's what I'm doing. Now we don't want this to be a value that's less than 1, so we just want to account for that. And you know, if count is less than 1, we're going to default it to 100. Otherwise, just use it. And then what I want to do is pass that into my fetch so that the fetch can handle that. So let me go back to quotes. I take a parameter here, count, and I don't want to lose the part right here. Right now, see, we have it hard-coded to 100, so I'm just going to actually use the variable there. And that's part of the API, if you remember. This Breaking Bad /v1 quotes integer, so number 5, that is part of their API, and that's the part where I could actually customize that, right? And that'll actually go retrieve that amount. So that's the value we're actually making dynamic. All right, let's go back to our code. We're making that part dynamic. I think the rest of it is good. So what that allows us to do then is go to our app here, and the way you attach a query string is by doing a question mark. Count is the name of our query string parameter, and then I can put 10 here as an example to see if that works. Boom, we got 10. Okay, very nice. Just to confirm, we can get 5. Excellent. Let's throw something wacky at it. Like I said, boom. Well, what happened there? Well, int_val actually took boom and converted it to 0. And then remember, if we are less than 1, it just defaults to 100. Okay? And again, I could go -5. And since it's less than 1, again, just defaults to 100. Awesome, awesome. So within today's lecture, just to do a sum up, a quick review, we created another Laravel app. We talked about domain or business logic objects and services, where we can organize our code because Laravel is not your app. So we organize our own code under our domain section. We have Tinker, which allows us to test out code before we actually try it in our web application. We can then use our applications in the routing layer, set up some data, and then pass that along into our Blade views and iterate over that information. So that wraps it up for this lecture. In up and coming lectures, we will start to build out applications where we can create our own data, update it, delete it, etc. For now, this lecture gives you an idea, again, how to create an app, create your own custom objects, and how to display that on a page. So until next time, have a good one.